So thank you so much for joining myself and Neil today discussing this new DCF, method. There's nothing really new about it. It's just like how us as an industry in real estate, we are approaching the idea of having valuations being done more explicitly. And we're going to discuss how we got into into this idea of making explicit valuations. So I'm going to run a quick introduction of my what I do and how I'm here talking to you about the DCF. And then we have the immense pleasure to be joined today by Professor Neil Crosby and asking him his opinion about what is that we need to do in terms of industry to really get our confidence back, if anything, and be really positive about the advice that we're giving in terms of valuation. Okay, so I am Maria Wiedner from Cambridge Finance. I'm going to tell a little bit more about what I do, but here we're going to talk about the implications of new DCF method to real estate investment valuations, and because the DCF will change everything. And that's what we are hoping. Okay, it might take some time to change everything, but surely we're going in the right direction. So my name is Maria Wiedner. I am a CFA charter holder and member of the RSCS. I am the CEO and founder of Cambridge Finance. And within Cambridge Finance, what we do is we do real estate finance and a lot of financial modeling, training, and consulting as well. So we do teach and we do help people build real estate valuation models. I'm also the CEO and founder of Real Estate Women, which is a diversity network, really talking about gender issues, but also human issues. So all the D&I debate we have there. I'm also a member of the RSCS DCF working group, which is I'm part of with Professor Neil Crosby, and I'm also associate professor at IE University in Spain. Okay, so that's me. Right, so in this 30-minute webinar, what I want to cover is this idea of what is old and what is new, how we're going to prepare for the change. We're going to discuss DCF models because this is really my area of expertise, teaching and building models. And then we're going to open the conversation with Professor Neil Crosby about the economic and geopolitical uncertainties and the values and how we're going to, as an industry, we need to think about stability as well, how we're going to make sure that our values are robust and stable, though it's kind of hard to talk about just stability as a lone, as a lone topic. The role of values and confidence in the real estate industry, transparency and data, that's going to be very important going forward, and the RSCS consultation, how you can give your opinion as well, and then the fundamental part, which is upskilling, because I think from our industry, this is what we need to do in order to get this transition in place, right? So what is old? So what is old is, I'm gonna shock, I guess, a lot of people here, which is this idea of all risk yields. It's not my opinion. It has come up from the RSCS independent review of real estate investment valuations that Mr. Peter Pereira-Gray has written, and I'm gonna read it for you just so you know that it's not really like I came up with it. It's like something that it has been put in paper by Mr. Gray, and it is that the property market is becoming more analytical, and I think this is fundamental, is that the clients are expecting us that there should be more transparency in the data points used, and that we, have some more to say, more to think about in terms of those data points. So instead, the models should be explicit to achieve the required levels of transparency, understanding, and education. Education here is my bold and underlined, because I think this is going to be fundamental going forward. So it is pretty much because the all risks yield, or the cap rate that some people call it. This is what we are trying to transition from, that valuations are not only done through like a equivalent yield and a market rent, and that's the value of the property. So we're trying to be a little bit more analytical about it. And why the old is not good enough anymore is because there's too much rule of thumb. And again, I'm gonna read it here because it's not my words. It's the own Mr. Peter Peregray words, is that what he said is, I will admit that it has been something of a concern for me that some valuations I have received over the years cannot be fully rationalized mathematically. For example, a valuer might discount a let residential or agricultural property from its vacant possession value by a rule of thumb amount. Yet, if one mathematically assesses that assumption, it does not always accord with actual rents paid and time that might be taken to realize vacant possession. The capital markets use of adjusting price expectations 25 basis points is stepped at 25 basis point steps might be another example of this too much rule of thumb. So I think the problem is that we could not really express ourselves in terms of the rule of thumb, because the rule of thumb could say, okay, we have driving forces that will affect the value positively, negatively, but in the rule of thumb that we can rationalize this rule of thumb. So I think this is the main problem we're facing at the moment. So what is new here is that we need to have more transparency in our valuations, more understanding and education. So the way to achieve it, I think the DCF is not that is going to solve all the problems we have in valuation, but it's just going to give us a tool to think more thoroughly about what is the explicit rationale behind the drivers that make up the investments. So I think this is the whole idea of the DCF, is to provide more confidence that we know what are the drivers for values. On the point of the 25 basis point rationale, I can't really comment, because as I see Bank of England, it just went up. The Bank of England rate went up 25 basis points. The Fed goes up as well at 25 basis points. So I think the 25 basis points seem to be the general practice in any yields or interest rates that are going on there. But I think the idea is like, what is the impact of 25 basis points on each of the drivers, so we can rationalize a little bit better in this case. Okay, so this is my take on what is new about. And then we talk a lot about the DCF models everywhere, because this is going to be the tool that is going to make up the discounted cash flow. And then my view is pretty much that there is no point in using a model if you don't understand how the calculations are done. Like, what is this mathematical rationale on the valuation? So it will be fundamental for any valuer out there to learn how to discount from first principles. So you will need to know that what is the present value, what is it's going to be the present value of £1, $1, €1. Is like, what is the fundamental meaning about present values? How we're going to calculate the IRR, but also like, what does IRR mean? And then also this idea of net present value, and what a present value means. Why is it a present value and not just a calculation on the profit as such? So my view, as if you know me, I use a lot of Excel to understand the values. I have no problems with black boxes, the Argos of this world, but it's just that how we got to here is that I say, like, people are hiding in the dark, is because a lot of people don't know what is how values are derived given an input. It's become kind of like a bit blind. So it's like you just put a yield in there, you just put a discount rate, and off comes a value. But you need to understand what is the impact of what the changes in your assumptions. What is it going to do to the value? What is that you are trying to achieve from this input? So that's my 10-minute introduction here. And I would like now to introduce Professor Neil Crosby here, who is a professor emeritus at Henley Business School, University of Reading. He has 40 years, so probably in the university sector. So he started university when he was 10 years old, specializing in developing property appraisal processes, methods, and research in commercial landlord and tenant relationship or the fight, I guess, but published over 150 papers on various topics in real estate. If you are in real estate investment, you probably have read his books, and author of Property Investment Appraisal as well, with Professor Andrew Baum, who we interviewed 2 weeks ago, a little bit more, and Stephen Devaney, and this was published in 2020. So here we have Professor Neil here. Thank you so much, Professor, for joining us today. It's a pleasure to have you with us. So what I want to talk to you about is like, what is your initial observation about how we got to here? So maybe I'm just going to stop the sharing here, so then people can concentrate more on what we are saying, if that's okay. So what is your initial observation? Like, how are we got to where we are in terms of industry, that we have to change the way we do things?
It is actually quite difficult to know where to start, because this has been going on for my lifetime in real estate, which started in 1971. So and we were talking about cash flows versus implicit methods then. So 50 years on, and we're still having a very similar conversation. I think the first thing I'd say is it's the context, the institutional market context of all of this. Mm-hmm. We're a global economy, and yet we actually, the way in which we structure markets can be very different in different places. If you looked at London, when I started, London was low rise, lots of small properties, lots of single tenancies. Why wouldn't you go for the easiest valuation you could possibly go for? And if the question that you are asked, and I think that's the other issue, it's not just the institutional context, but what question are you trying to answer? And the normal valuation question is exchange price in the marketplace. And I don't think that has any, in a sense, it's not about rational pricing, it's about what is the actual price. There's a job to be done in property markets of literally price identification, and not an observation of whether those are rational or not. And if that's the question, and you have in a sense, a simple marketplace with lots of very good data on transactions, and lots of transactions taking place, and I am characterizing the UK in sort of 1970s, 1980s, into the 90s really, then why wouldn't you go for the most accurate model, which is a direct comparison model? And that's what an initial yield, cap rate, equivalent yield model is. It's a comparative model using yield as the unit of comparison. And even now, having gone through this valuation review, and the RICS wanting to be a global body, but having most of its roots in the UK, goes for a valuation review where a lot of the context of that valuation review is UK, but it is a global issue. So no doubt the Australians valuing Sydney office blocks, no transactions hardly, huge lot sizes. They're going, what's new about DCF? What else could we have done other than value those kind of properties by a cash flow, explicit cash flow approach? And so for some of us, cash flows are embedded completely in our psyche, and cap rates are the easy way out when we have the data, but not unless. And for others, it's completely the other way around. And writing a global and the RICS is now trying to write a global rule book, if you like, for trying to pull together all these different contexts and different jurisdictions and different markets and different lease structures, and everything is different in different places. And yet this is the guidance note that they are consulting on at the moment, although it's not called a guidance note anymore, it's something else now, professional statement or something like that.
A guidance,
whatever it's called, they are consulting on it at the moment, and it is aimed at a global market. But and a lot of, I suspect a lot of the consultation responses in the UK will be, what's wrong with what we do now? You know, we've been shown to be extremely accurate by all the studies on valuation accuracy using our implicit model. Why should we be forced to move from that model? All the way through to some people saying, what's this about? We've been doing this for years. Why do we need why do we need to have it called new? Like, you know, you put new in your title, and a lot of them were saying, what have you done that for? You know, it's not new, it's 50 years old as far as we're concerned. So I think those contexts are difficult. I think the other context is that although there seems to be a sort of implicit criticism of UK valuers using cap rate techniques, UK valuers have been doing cash flows for years, and I think are very good at them. And they're well thought through, but not for market valuation. They've been doing it for a completely different role, which is the analysis of price. And I think that's the other big issue, is that you may be using or being pushed to use the same model for both roles, but they're not the same. And therefore the inputs need to be considered differently for investment value, I think, than they do for exchange price. Because investment value should be some kind of view of a rational outcome. Exchange price might not be, and we have so much evidence through time of irrational pricing within real estate markets.
Thank you.
I'll stop.
Yeah.
Those are the two things.
Yeah, you mentioned two things very interesting, because you mentioned that the UK has been good at accuracy in terms of pricing, but then you also mentioned that historically we have been having irrational pricing as well. So I was wondering,
that's not UK. That's
see.
Pretty much everywhere.
Yeah.
I mean, there's been debates about Germanic country valuations versus, in a sense, Anglo-Saxon, UK, US, Ireland, for example, in the different, variations around, the different volatility of cash flows through time. There are huge differences between different countries. And even though we may be using the same guidance notes and definitions and what have you, the interpretation of those across the world is I think fascinatingly different.
I think that's the whole point of the DCF, is to entangling what's the difference. Because if I am a German investor buying in the UK, I would like to know what is the makeup of this value, and I would like to know what are the data points as such that needs to be discussed. And I think this is how reading the independent review, that's what it gives me this idea that we need to, even though we have perhaps priced as an more or less accurate, this is, I don't know how you measure this accuracy, but given this, we will like to understand a little bit more about the analytics behind, like, why is it, a discount rate to use? What is the growth used? What is the assumptions? Because I guess this is the idea of the pricing, but this is the problem.
Yeah, if you want a pricing book, I mean, I think some of the I've seen some of the feedback already, as it happens, for the consultation, and some of it says, oh, why haven't you told us what the discount rate is? It's actually as precise as that. In other words, can we be told it's 10% or whatever it is, and the answer, of course you can't. If you want a prescribed model, then you're going to be very, very unhappy indeed. So I think the justification of the method that you use is one of the main thrusts of the Peter Pierre Gray was, it's not about use DCF all the time. It's about, if you have a model that you are using and you feel it's appropriate, there's now, I think, more emphasis on you having to justify that model to the client. Because let's be clear, this review was client based, and the criticism of valuers within that review, and I would still say that it was mainly UK respondents, therefore, the UK is in the firing line a little bit here, was that I don't think it was really about the methods and the models and why aren't you using DCF. I think there was more just an issue about justification of which model you are using, and the identifying the implications of the inputs.
Absolutely.
So I would go down the route of saying, if you're using an all risk yield model, nothing wrong with that, as long as you are showing to clients what that means. And I'm going to go back in history, and everybody starts yawning. I'm going back to the 1980s, about 2 years before the 1990 crash, and the cap rates for prime properties were about 5%. The target rates would have been in the region of 13 or 14% because of where the inflation rates were and because of where the risk rates were, bond rates were. So if you work that out, that's a 9% implied growth. Now, was that being reported at the time? Of course it wasn't. There was none. It was just 5% cap rate. And is that worth it? Well, yeah, everybody else is paying it, so why shouldn't I? If you're going to go down the simplistic route that nobody knew what they were doing, I don't believe that for a second, by the way. I believe, and I don't believe that that everybody was totally taken by surprise by the global financial crisis crash. The global financial crisis in the UK was actually almost blamed on the commercial real estate market in one report. So, but I don't believe for one moment that in 2005, 6 and the early part of 7, a lot of people in the market didn't realize what was going to happen. And I'm sure 1 or 2 actually acted on it. I think a lot didn't act on it, and hence we had the problem we had. But there was, if you actually looked at it in any sort of rational pricing terms, nothing worked from 1987 onwards, or from 2004 onwards. Every cash flow that we did in the classroom and every analysis we did for anybody who wanted to hear it said that the property market in the UK was becoming dangerously overpriced. Now, Colin Lizieri, who's now at Cambridge University, and I went to an IPF seminar in 2005, and we were absolutely pilloried because we dared to talk the market down and scaremonger. And when everybody else, well, not everybody else, I mean, I think plenty of people knew what was going to happen. But when but they were talking about good markets, strong markets, and we were saying, no, that equals dangerous markets. And I think that, to me, that's always been the main use of a cash flow, is if we can get the forecasting models right, and I don't think we have in the past, but surely we're going to get better at that, then we have some very good tools for identifying mispricing mispricing through cycles. And there's a lot of work being done right now on a new definition of value coming out of Basel III, which is called prudent value. And in a sense, a prudent value regime could be based on a cash flow, an investment value regime. But that's a whole new discussion that's going on right now, because the EU and the UK PRA, the Bank of England Prudential Regulation Authority, are all consulting at the moment on implementing a brand new definition of value called prudent value.
That's
and
interesting because
cash flows might be part of the answer to that one, but I'll leave that one hanging.
it's interesting because as two things that you mentioned there is that there is no problem with the method as long as we understand what the inputs are, the implications, and I think this is the main criticism, that for some reason we are not able to really rationalize on everything that goes on in the yields, because everything is kind of put together and there is no, like, it's a rule of thumb, as I mentioned. And the other thing is with the DCF, it's a view to the future as well. So you might be able, with the DCF, rationalize about the economics of the property rather than just the property that it is now. So I guess that could be one of the benefits of the DCF. But let's just jump into the next question here, Noel, if you don't mind, because we also have some question here from the people attending. But it's just, so what I want to say as well is, because the methodology, and as we see, like any method can give different answers, and we have a lot of uncertainty already in economic certainty, geopolitical certainty, wars and inflation and everything. So how are we going to make sure that we are, like, that we also provide some certainty, and then, like, how would this, like, all this changes my how would we provide confidence that, like, I don't want us to become, I don't know if there's anybody from Germany here, but it's like the prudent value of, like, no volatility, but it's just like about the confidence. And
confidence is one thing. I think certainty is something completely different. Dream on, quite frankly. There's no such thing as certainty in valuation.
Absolutely.
There's no such thing. Valuation accuracy is measured by how much you get it wrong, in a sense. So we've got to accept, and clients surely understand this by now, that just because we give them a single point answer doesn't mean it's a single point. And I mean, the real problem there is, as soon as you start talking about measures of variation around valuations, you're giving lawyers an open goal. It's called valuation negligence, and you set the margin of error. So I remember discussions we've had for years about, should we report valuations as ranges? And all I've always answered and said, why would you give the lawyers an open goal of setting the parameters for a competent valuation as being somewhere between this number and that number? Because as soon as you don't hit that range, or you're proved not to have hit that range in a negligence case, you can guess that you've set your own margin of error. Let's put it that way. So it's sort of catch-22. The wider you set it, the more difficult it is to justify to a client why the range is from 1 million to 2 million. But actually, valuation variation is quite high, and it's the nature of the beast. And we should not be being judged on how close we get to some spurious sort of midpoint, in my opinion, anyway. So I think that the problem about confidence is consistency. If we are more consistent in the way in which we do things, and so I don't think you should aim at the answer. I think you should aim at the process, and so that means justifying the models we use and explaining the outcomes. And one of the things that I've always thought that was the one big issue with the all-risk yield was it hid everything. It's not called all-risk yield for nothing.
Absolutely.
It hides. I use that word. Some people say it includes, but I'm going to say it hides all the risks. So should not we be more explicit in our reporting about what that actually means? And I think that ends up being the justification that Peter Pierre Gray talked about. He basically said, and the RICS accepted it verbatim, in the sense of the regulation committee said, yes, we accept the Peter Pierre report. One of the things was that he said you must justify every time you don't use a DCF. Well, I'm sort of thinking, well, surely you should be justifying the model you use, full stop. And if you use a DCF, why aren't you justifying that one? But still to accord with Peter Piera Gray, I think the emphasis is probably on those using the Ulrich-Schiller technique to justify their approach. And you justify it by showing that you understand what's hidden in the yield. Now, obviously, you've got one indicator. If you assume it shows one thing, then it shows something else. You can work that out. But if you assume something else for one of the indicators, that moves all the other indicators. So it's not easy. I mean, in the guidance note that we're drafting at the moment, we're trying to give a little bit of help into how you might
might do it. Yeah,
might show that.
Neil, sorry, it's just we have only we are over. We have so much to talk about, but I just want to thank you so much. It's just like a very short. I know we could have spent a lot of time here. I just want so we have some questions that we didn't answer.
I'm looking at them now.
Yeah, we'll try to address them at another time, maybe at another webinar, or maybe we're gonna write something. One thing I would like to say is that if you're interested in, I do teach, Neil teaches as well, but I do teach DCF valuations, a lot of it, and I do financial modeling. So if you like to join us on this course, we do offering some. I'm just gonna share here my screen. So we do have some discounts here for you to upskill. So if you want to come to my course, the Cambridge Finance Certificate in Real Estate, in real estate financial modeling, development, and value-add strategies as well, you can use this code here, RICS DCF 2023. I would like to, so if you have any questions, I think you have questions, so we'll try to address them if we can get in touch with you all. And then if you want to get in touch, please do get in touch with me. There is also the RCS consultation that Neil is working very hard on it, and I'm just like on the background helping as well. But giving to give some kind of more structure to the DCF valuations methods. And I'd like to thank you all for joining us. I understand there are a lot more questions. We have here so many questions, but it's mainly to start the conversation and mainly to get you to think about what is going to mean for you and in terms of value, in terms of investor, this new DCF method that is going to be applied in market valuations as well. So
Maria, can I just very, very quickly?
Sure.
There's quite a few questions. I'm very happy to type answers to all of those questions, at my leisure, basically. Will they be able to be circulated to participants, or will it have to be answers to individuals? Yeah, we can address them. So I can definitely send them to you, and then we can write something on that as well. Let me just stop share here. And yeah, because it's so 6 or 7 questions that are and hopefully answerable. Hopefully answerable. I'll do my best anyway. I can circulate them, and then we can send to everybody else. And I'd like to thank you all very much for coming. The whole it's a lot of you today. 400 signed up, 200 came on the live session. So thank you so much for all of you. Thank you, Neil, and I'm sure we'll see you again soon. Pleasure. Bye, everyone. Thank you.